our national security is being guarded by a bunch of deuce you wouldn't trust to throw your cousin a surprise party. No one on the chain thought to ask, who is JG? What are these initials? Well, they could have been leaking secrets to Jeff Goldblum for all they know.
Yes. You know, the assumption is that as a member of the mainstream news media, The Atlantic, that he's a treasonous, treacherous, thieving, cheating, deceptive fraud who is there to do whatever is most illegitimate. And that's fair, I think. That's fair. Again, he is the guy, Jeffrey Goldberg, that came up with that fake story that President Trump called American war dead in Europe suckers and losers. That's this guy. And how does he? I don't think he's on National Security Advisor Colonel Michael Walz's mailing list. And I don't think it autofills when he goes to join a group chat that the Pentagon and the CIA are on to talk about, dropping some bombs on Houthi rebels in Yemen. But that's me. The problem is the permanent bureaucracy, I suspect, in this case, some member of the Democrat Party tribe that's in there, and they sabotage things. And when he's caught, he should go to Guantanamo Bay for the rest of his life and be waterboarded just for fun, just the Perrier Spritz. We call it the Perrier Spritz, the waterboard. That's good. Now, we do have audio that I would like to share with you, this phony, corrupt, non-reporter Democrat. He's just a front man, and they giggle about it. They don't care about the national security implications, if there are any, and I honestly don't think that there are. They hope that it will hurt the national security of the United States. When I say they, I mean the Democratic Party and all of that. Oh, I should mention that in our ongoing technical drama today, all of our phone lines just dropped, our call screening program. We had 9 lines, 9 people holding, might have been you, 9 people holding, and all of our phone lines just dropped all at once. I blame Jeffrey Goldberg at the Atlantic. Might have been him. I don't think he's on our lists, but let's go to the audio. Let's go to the audio soundbites. We'll go to soundbite number 1. We don't normally start at soundbite number 1, but we're going to do that. Now, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, found himself with a gaggle of reporters around him, and they're yelling, "Hey, we're trying to make a scandal out of a news reporter being on a text thread, and nothing came of it. But we're going to try to get everybody fired in the Trump administration." From the Secretary of Defense to the National Security Advisor to the chef in the White House mess, everybody's going to have to lose their jobs because now they're very upset if people in government are told to stay home or told that we're scaling back at the FCC or the FAA or any place. They want to keep all those government employees going. But now they want to get as many people fired as possible because were it not for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. And their selective political outrage is a norm. So here it is, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, being asked about this. The Democrats are trying to turn into the biggest scandal. They put a gate on it. Now. They call it something gate.
Can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic? And were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does.
Yeah, the suckers and losers story, that's a big Jeffrey Goldberg story. And it was never substantiated. It was a presumably false claim made by this fake reporter, and they turn it into a big thing. So this is what they do. There are a lot of fake reporters who have made careers out of having sleazy headlines from time to time, and they're always attacking Republicans. because their job is not journalism, it's Democrat Party propaganda. But Pete Hegseth, I'd say, summed it up pretty well. Step one, consider the source, I think, I think that's the thing. And you see this other one, this Democrat judge. There's kind of a funny story. A Democrat judge who's attacking Trump, Millett, saying that, these poor Tren de Aragua MS-13 gang members, Nazis were treated better during World War II, she says. But if I remember correctly, we dropped bombs on them from airplanes until they died and they gave up eventually. My father dropped bombs on their heads from his Hellcat, and they worked. Those darn things, they worked. But never mind that. You're Democrats. They're really out of their minds. So, again, Pete Hegseth with reporters asking questions, and look how responsive they are, unlike the Biden administration. Where was the Secretary of Defense during the Biden administration? He checked out. He was in the hospital for weeks and didn't tell anybody. And going home to his $3.5 million house in Virginia. Where did he get that money? As a government employee and a soldier, a $3.5 million house, that's pretty good. But this is Pete Hegseth.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Right,
Thank you.
And that's all I have to say about that. Nobody was texting war plans. Now, I've got to say, and I mentioned this a little while ago, Jeffrey Goldberg and his little piece in The Atlantic, and it's, somebody made a funny joke about it on Twitter earlier today, too. Said, well, wait a minute, you're not exactly revealing secrets by giving it to Atlantic magazine, which no one reads. And that's pretty much, maybe the Houthis read, they have their paid subscriptions to Atlantic magazine, maybe by the Biden administration. Remember, we found out they're giving millions of dollars to, like, Politico, left-wing rag in Washington, D.C. And then when they were caught, it was Elon Musk that discovered this, that the U.S. government was transferring millions of dollars to a news outlet, left-wing news outlet Politico in Washington, bunch of friends in the Democrat Party and the Biden White House and the Obama White House. And when it was found out, they said, yeah, of course, they're paying for subscriptions. And I'm sorry, taxpayers are paying millions of dollars in subscriptions to Politico to get the playbook, which they could get just by signing up themselves if they wanted it so badly. But never mind that. These people, can I just say these people? So President Trump was then asked about it yesterday at an event at the White House, and he was just hearing about it, so he really didn't know anything about it.
Mr. President, your reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it.
I know nothing. And again, the media, even the Atlantic article, and I'm not going to sign up for a subscription, but what I've read of the Atlantic article, and then NBC fake news and the rest, they're all going crazy about it because they're trying to turn it into a big scandal. That's their goal today, turn this into a big scandal. Big story, it broke. But I haven't seen anything published that made me say, wow, that's a secret. That shouldn't have been shared. I haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen anything from Jeffrey Goldberger from NBC Fake News, which read the Jeffrey Goldberg article. And I haven't seen a headline saying, the defense secretary said, or the national security advisor said, we're coming in from the east at 550 miles an hour in a formation of the flying wedge, and we're going to be at an altitude of 1,500 feet, and we're going to launch our air-to-ground missiles 2 miles offshore. We haven't seen anything like that. There's no sensitive defense information that I have seen reproduced by The Atlantic magazine and Jeffrey Goldberg or by NBC Fake News, which is trying to turn this into a big scandal. Now, I've got to say, who's the dimwit that included Jeffrey Goldberg on this text thread and beyond that. Now, President Trump at the White House yesterday, because the news media, they really think they're going to try to make it into a big thing.
You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
Having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis?
Right.
Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, says Walz and Hegseth shouldn't be disciplined. Speaker of the House staying calm and adult about this. And the left, they're soiling themselves again, which they so frequently do. And then they break away and go burn a Tesla because they're mental, a lot of mental people. The administration, as I understand it, I just was with the president in the Oval Office, just how the administration is addressing what happened, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said. And when asked if he was concerned about the report, Speaker of the House said, apparently an inadvertent phone number made it into that thread. They're going to track that down and make sure that doesn't happen again. Now, that's a good idea, I think, obviously, from the Speaker of the House. But you got to find out how that happened and who, whether there's some weasel in the machine, like what's his name? Alexander Vindman. If you got a Vindman in there, if you got an Alexander Vindman in the machine, and, that means a Democrat, they work their way into the machine like I saw MSDNC had their pal Penitentiary Face Brennan on this morning. Speaking of which, let's get to, and, they come out and they lie and they cheat and they steal and they undermine the country, John Brennan and his fellow travelers. CNN has one common sense conservative, Scott Jennings, that appears on their channel. And this morning on CNN, was it this morning? This morning or last night on CNN, Scott Jennings was, because they're all going crazy about it last night and today, but the one common sense person, Scott Jennings, was trying to calm the hysterians down before their undergarments were destroyed.
Are you shocked? Well, sure. I mean, it's a shocking thing, and they've admitted that it was a mistake and admitted that it's authentic, so they're owning up to it. I think they're still, based on what I've heard tonight, trying to figure out how it happened. I'm not sure the National Security Advisor, Walz, even knows Goldberg. In fact, I don't believe he knows him and has never met him.
And has never met him. Yeah, I think I heard that John Berman fake anchor Fanker on CNN. So that'd be this morning then and not last night. Scott Jennings, who is just trying to tell the truth and get things straight and not become a hysterian in a hissy fit.
I did learn a few things in some of my conversations, if you're interested. One is that the Signal program was preloaded on a number of devices and agency computers in this circuit when they got there. So in their view, it was already in use. Number two, in some of the messages, they talk about needing to go to the high side computers, which is the classified system. So they clearly were knowing there was a line on what you could discuss in a chat like this versus classified system.
And again, Atlantic and NBC Fake News and the rest have not published anything that Goldberg allegedly heard or saw, read on this thread that constitutes revealing classified information.
Number three, there is a dispute over whether the term war plans is being exaggerated. And number four, look, I love the policy. It's well executed. You've got a thoughtful policy discussion going on, and we did what the Biden administration would not do, stop these people from harassing our shipping lanes and our boats and our Navy.
Which the Biden administration and the Democrats did nothing about, because they might as well be Houthis. They're not on our side. What did they do to the Houthis? I think they sent them billions of dollars. They did send billions to the Ayatollahs in Tehran, that's for sure. Hey, are you a yo-yo dieter? You diet, you lose weight, but then you gain it all back, plus a few pounds. Happens a lot. Then later you lose it again, and then you regain it again and again. Well, breaking free of your yo-yo diet pattern is one of the main reasons doctors created Lean. Lean from Brickhouse Nutrition is a supplement and not an injection or anything like that. And you don't need a prescription from a doctor either. The science behind Brickhouse Nutrition's Lean is very impressive. It's studied natural ingredients target weight loss in 3 powerful ways. Lean helps maintain healthy blood sugar levels, and that is a good thing. It helps control appetite and cravings. It helps burn fat by converting fat into energy, and that's good. Listen, if you're tired of losing weight and gaining it back again, if you want to lose meaningful amounts of weight at a healthy pace, Lean was created just for you. Let me get you started with 20% off when you enter PLANT20, PLANTE20, at TakeLean.com. That's code PLANT20 at TakeLean.com. The statements and products have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease and is not a substitute or alternative for care from a healthcare provider. The media and the Democrats, but I repeat myself, they're trying to make a big deal out of this, and I'm still looking for the sensitive or classified information that was leaked during this text thread. And what I'm really looking for is which one of these idiots in the government machine plugged in Jeffrey Goldberg to this text thread. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. I have Jeffrey Goldberg, the reporter himself, on DNC TV, communist that he is. Have that coming up as well. But now let's go back to the phones. And why don't you hear what they're doing in Massachusetts with illegal alien criminals, putting them back on the street. Democrats are the party of crime and criminals and gangs, as long as you're a foreign gang. I don't think they support American gangs. Let's grab the phones. Let's go to Rachel, the wonderful Rachel, calling from Clark County, Virginia. Rachel, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hello, Chris. Always such an honor to speak to you. I'm glad you're having a good day today.
You bet. Always.
So I just wanted to point out the hypocrisy. Do we remember when Biden wrote his book and gave classified information to his ghostwriter? It's things like that. They never care when they do it, but they'll take any sliver of anything they can find and twist it like a pretzel. It's absolutely ridiculous, and the hypocrisy is just what stuns me.
That is a great reminder, Rachel. I'm really glad that you brought that up because, no, you said remember when. And the truth is I was not remembering when, but right now I'm going right to the Google machine because of you. I've got to say for Jeffrey Goldberg, this is you got such a big scoop here. Maybe you should publish the big scoop. Because right now, the only thing that he's scooping with is I was on this thread and they were talking about Yemen. All right, where's the headline? That's it, and that is it. And our wonderful Rachel that just called in, I'm glad she reminded me, and Piercy was looking at me like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that too. But I went and I grabbed it because of Al Gore's amazing internet. Peace be upon him, from 2024, February 8th, 2024. That's just last year, not so long ago. The headline from the Associated Press, Democrat front group. The headline is, How the Ghostwriter of Biden's Memoirs Ended Up in the Center of a Classified Document Probe. They love a probe in Washington, D.C., don't they? That's why you got to have so much lube around the city of Washington. President Joe Biden worked so closely with the ghostwriter with whom he is accused of sharing classified secrets that he once declared that he'd trust the author with his life. Now, that's kind of a stupid lead sentence because that's not really what the story is about. Mark Zwanitzer, Zwonitzer, Zwonitzer, not the best name. Mark Zwanitzer, worked with Joe Biden on two memoirs, 2007's Promises to Keep and Promise Me, Dad. That's Promise Me, Dad. That's from his daughter. Promise Me, Dad, you won't make me shower with you anymore. His daughter. Promise me, Dad, I can still smoke crack and stay in the Navy because you'll pull strings on Capitol Hill. Promise Me, Dad. That's kind of a weird title given. It's Promise Me, Grandpa, because he doesn't know how many grandchildren he has, which was published 10 years later, according to a report released Thursday by special counsel Robert Hur. Biden was sloppy in his handling of classified material found at his home and former office, and shared classified information contained in some of them with Zwanitzer, the biographer, the ghostwriter. While the two were working on Biden's second book, Robert Hur says no criminal charges are warranted. Isn't it amazing when Democrats, this happened to Hillary Clinton too, with her 33,000 emails and the server and the laptops and ordering her staff to get hammers and smash their I think there were Blackberries at the time and all that, and smash their phones and destroying evidence. That's called destroying evidence. That's fine when you're a Democrat. And remember the FBI director, horrible, awful, corrupt that he was, with his press conference about Hillary. Democrats are still furious with him. He said, well, sure, there were classified documents that were unsecured, and she was sharing them all over the place, and they were open and available to hackers from all over the world in Iran and China and every place else. But there will be no charges for Hillary Clinton. And here's Joe Biden sharing classified documents all over the place with some guy named Zwanitzer, and then they, even Robert Hur, is like, well, there will no criminal charges are warranted against Biden. But Donald Trump had classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, which was secured by the Secret Service, and there are definitely charges warranted there. This is why we have a filthy, corrupt justice system, why it's clear that we have a filthy, corrupt justice system in the United States and in Washington, and that there are lefties abusing their power all over the place. But no charges are warranted because he's a Democrat and not a Republican. Again, President Trump, the office over the steakhouse in Washington, not secured by the Secret Service. The garage where his Corvette was, not secured like for classified documents secured. Whereas Mar-a-Lago, where President Trump had classified documents, very highly secured. But never mind that, because we have a two-tiered system of justice, one system of justice for Democrats and one system of justice for Republicans. And that's why so many millions and millions of Americans have no faith in the Justice Department, the FBI, our very system of justice writ large. Now, let's go to Jeffrey Goldberg, who on Morning Joke this morning, where else would he go? They were doing it naked from the hot tub, the Morning Joke hot tub. And Jeffrey Goldberg, where he, and again, I'm still looking for the lead of the story. I'm still looking for the big splashy headline. Here's what they said on the text thread that the left-wing radicals at the Atlantic are using to undermine the national security of the United States, which they would do very comfortably. But here's what Jeffrey Goldberg had to say on Morning Joke.
How did this happen? I mean, it's one of those things where you just get a message request on a messaging app, and you say, yeah, sure, message me. And then the next thing you know, you're part of the PC Houthi small group, messaging group on Signal with Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and the head of the CIA and Tulsi Gabbard and all the rest.
It's the PC Houthi small group. But you got the CIA director and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense and the National Security Advisor, and he's a fake reporter who's an anti-Republican disease. So naturally says, wow, I'm in on this, and naturally I think anybody would stay in on it. I had a friend texting me who's a good man, said, well, why didn't Jeffrey Goldberg do the honest thing and say, hey, wait a minute, this is Jeffrey Goldberg. Do you know I'm on this? Oh, don't be ridiculous. There's probably not a reporter in Washington that would do that. But this sleazoid, you gotta find out whose fingers I'm going like this, like I'm typing with two fingers. Whose fingers typed Jeffrey Goldberg's name or phone number and added it to this group? Because that is everything right now. Everything. And I read some BS this morning from one of the left-wingers saying, oh, it apparently, and the word apparently is the only word that matters, apparently came from National Security Advisor Michael Waltz's account. All right, well, who typed it? Because I don't think Colonel Special Forces Michael Waltz is the guy that added Jeffrey Goldberg to this group text thread. I don't think that's what happened. So let's find out what did happen. And Jeffrey Goldberg might very well be lying because he's a liberal and a Democrat and a journalist. I'm making quotation marks with my fingers. He's a journalist. Now, here's Goldberg on Morning Joke.
To be very, very clear, I did not fully believe it until Saturday the 15th. I received a text in this chain from Pete Hegseth detailing the war sequencing, the attack sequence, weapons packages, targets, all that sort of thing. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, and it gives us the time. It gives me the time that the attack is going to launch. And so, I sat and I waited. And I figured out, obviously, if there's an attack on Yemen in 2 hours, then I'm not in a kind of disinformation bubble or in a simulation of some sort. That these are just the top national security advisors of the United States telling each other that an attack is about to commence and talking about the elements of the attack.
All right, and you didn't. And that now, wait a minute, because he's talking about. Well, no, this is today on Morning Joke that he's talking about this, and he says this was happening 10 days ago on the 15th, right? And we're just finding out about it now. Did it take him that long to write his little Atlantic piece? That's a long time, I think. Tippity type, maybe he types with one finger or something. Not even both hands, just one finger. Clackety clack. Now, he did say that it had the time or times of the attack. And, is this really going to happen? But he said that on the 15th, it sounded like he was on this thread for more than one day. At least you could interpret what he said and the way he said it to believe that he was on that this text thread was going for more than one day. So Saturday the 15th, and he says the times of the attack, and then he said that's 2 hours from the time he's getting these texts. And I'm just wondering if, just 10 days ago, how much of that did we know? Did we know we were going to strike Yemen that day? Was that already? Because I know that we knew ahead of time that we were going to be striking the Houthis in Yemen because they were attacking shipping going into the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. I know that was public information. So what the actual scoop was, and then there's an element where it becomes clear that they knew that they were not on a classified thread because they said on the thread, let's go over to a classified platform. So I don't have to worry about this. Jeffrey Goldberg.
I would say that I don't know Mike Waltz. I think I've met him twice. I think I met him at a conference or a party at a conference like a couple of years ago. And then maybe 4 or 5, I forgot when he got to Congress, but 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know him. I was happy.
I don't know.
Obviously, that Mike Waltz reached out. Obviously, I instantly thought, like we all do these days, well, if it is actually Mike Waltz who's reaching out, there's no harm in accepting a message request. All you do is get the message.
So we, and again, I don't think he has any legal duty to say, hey, I shouldn't be on this thread. And some don't. Now, but here's the thing. Said I don't know Mike Waltz. I maybe met him once. I might have met him once myself. I can't say that I recall meeting him. But did you trade phone numbers? Did he punch your information into his phone? I don't think so. So how exactly does this happen? How is this explained? I don't know him. We don't know each other. I might have met him once long ago. We didn't have any conversation. But somehow we're pretending that your contact information was punched in by him for this thread on national security issues, and he's now the national security advisor. That is BS. That doesn't make sense. I don't believe that for a moment. That is not what happened. Michael Waltz didn't take Jeffrey Goldberg's number when they met briefly years ago and then punch in his contact information to make sure that he joined this text thread with the CIA director, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to talk about bombing the Houthis in Yemen. That didn't happen. So what did happen? Pre-dawn raids, FBI, battering rams, flashlights on helmets, M4 rifles. We're going to have to break some stuff down. You know, they went after they did these pre-dawn raids on who? Oh, I got Joe Biden's daughter's diary that somebody gave me. And, you know, for crying out loud, they're doing pre-dawn raids on that. For yeah, that probably happened. James O'Keefe. They raided James O'Keefe pre-dawn raid because somebody gave him a diary that Biden's daughter left at a halfway house or wherever she left it. But this is different. Now, Jeffrey Goldberg on MSDNC as usual.
It struck me as somewhat unusual because we all, and I in particular, have a somewhat contentious relationship with some people in the Trump administration, namely Trump.
Wow.
And so it's a little bit odd, but why wouldn't the National Security Advisor want to talk to a magazine editor, a magazine that covers national security issues?
You don't cover national security. You cover shoes on Hollywood people. It struck me as somewhat unusual. Really? It struck you as somewhat unusual that you were included on a thread with the CIA director, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, National Security Advisor, and no other reporters? That struck you as being somewhat unusual? Because that doesn't happen every day? Please. Jeffrey Goldberg.
I saw Hegseth's response yesterday. It was just unserious. Obviously, this would, by the standard vernacular understanding of what war plan means, it was at 1:45, this is going to happen. At 1:52, this is going to happen. Then this happens. Then that happens. And then we do this. And then we do that. He's telling this group. He's letting them know probably more than they need to know.
Well, that's not really up to you. I don't think you have a background in national security or in warfare. But, 1:45 and then 1:52, this is going to happen. And what did you do with that? Did you pass it along immediately to the Houthis, to Hamas? Jeffrey Goldberg, he might be Jewish, but even their Jews hate Jews these days. In fact, you see they're protesting at Columbia University again today because they hate the Jews. Honestly, the Catholics hate the Protestants, and the Protestants hate the Catholics, and the Hindus hate the Muslims, and everybody hates the Jews. These guys are amazing, aren't they? Yes, they are. All right, let's take a telephone call. Then I do have this judge, this lunatic Democrat judge, saying that we're so mean to Trende Aragua on MS-13 that we treat him worse than we treated the Nazis during World War II. That's what this judge is saying. But right now, let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Mike, calling from St. John's, Florida. Michael, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, good to speak with you. I had a proposition for you here. What if this wasn't a mistake? What if this was done with intent to feed this guy some seemingly sensitive information to see what he would do with it?
Well, I've got to say, you should assume that he's going to undermine the national security of the United States and the Trump administration and the Hegseth Defense Department and the Colonel Michael Waltz National Security Advisor Office, that he's going to undermine. But I've got to say that your overarching point and question is very important, and it goes to everything here. And that's why we need to know who punched in Jeffrey Goldberg's number under the guise of coming from the National Security Advisor, because it may very well be like an Alexander Vindman type who is here to sabotage the President of the United States and the Pentagon under Pete Hegseth. And in fact, right now, I've got to say, Mike, right now, I suspect that it is exactly that someone deliberately sabotaged Michael Waltz, the National Security Advisor, and Pete Hegseth, and they don't care about national security. They care about sabotaging the Trump administration.
I don't know so much, and I understand your point. I don't know so much that they're trying to sabotage. My point was they weren't trying to sabotage Waltz, is that they were more or less trying to get this guy out of their hair. Feed him some erroneous information. Like you said, Pete Hegseth was very detailed. He thought with the times of this, he thought overly detailed. Okay? Feed him that information, see what he does with it, and see where that information pops up. Okay? So, man, because this guy, by his own admission, doesn't like Trump. Okay, how do you get rid of him? If you want to out him as a traitor, okay, you feed him information, you see what he does with it, and then he's the only one that's got it. And then once he's got that information, if he gives it to a foreign entity, then you've got what you're dealing with.
Well, that is true, certainly. If you're suggesting an intelligence operation was run against Jeffrey Goldberg to see if he has links to bad guys, and that he's a pipeline to the bad guys, right?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting. I don't know that he's that well plugged in, Jeffrey Goldberg, but very interesting indeed. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, our Director of National Intelligence, in the hearing on Capitol Hill today with all of our intelligence chiefs, Democrats are trying to make hay out of this, and Tulsi Gabbard just said, no classified material was communicated on this text thread, and they don't care. They're Tommy Lee Jones and the Fugitive. They don't care, right? I don't care. They're just going to try to make a scandal out of it because they're busy releasing child-raping Venezuelan gang members back onto the streets, and they don't want anyone to talk about that.